Welcome back to Real Life Fishing, and in this episode we're going to talk about some more of the settings for Humminbird Helix units. Ignore that 1066 depth, we're sitting in the garage, but we're going to talk about some more of the settings on Humminbird Helix units that people might not be aware of, or just unsure how they work, right? So one that I wasn't aware of until last year was this. So, well, first off, right, so you're driving your boat along, right? So we'll imagine here, right, because I'm not on the lake. So we'll imagine that this is your boat icon right here where the crosshairs are. So you can only see, this much, right? If we're heading north, right? If we're heading this way, you can only see this much of what's in front of you, right? So if you're up on plane, what do you do, right? You zoom out, and then you can see, just this much more, right? But there can still be some shallow spots that, might be a ways up ahead of you that you don't necessarily want to run over, but if you zoom out too far, you can lose that detail, right? I mean, this little white spot right here, the top of this is pretty skinny. I mean, I know it's safe. I've driven over it a whole bunch before. I made the map, but if we go down to that, yeah. So the top of that is 6 foot, right? But so the top of this over here, this is like 4.9 or whatever. So you might not want to run that over on plane. But again, if you zoom out too far, you might lose that, right? And I mean, sure, this is a pretty small lake, right? So at a quarter mile, you can see the whole lake on the screen, both of the lakes, right? So not that big of a deal, but if you're on bigger water, that could be a problem. So how do you see more ahead of you while you're driving, right? Because you don't care about where you've been, when you're going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour on the lake, like, some of the bass boat guys are. Our last boat did 70. This one's a nice, comfortable, like 30, 31, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, when you're going fast, you want to be able to see more out in front of you, right? So there's actually a setting for that. It is in chart, and it's called vessel offset is what it is. And then right, you see I've got that turned on, and then beneath that is offset speed, right? And so what does that mean, right? So first off, vessel offset means that when you reach a predetermined speed, the little icon for your boat, instead of being in the center of the graph, it's going to go down here, roughly. We're not on the water, I can't show you, but it goes roughly down to about here. And the speed, that happens automatically, and then the speed at which that takes place is that offset speed, right? So I've got this set to 10 mile an hour because we do quite a bit of mapping and whatever, so we drive around quite frequently between 4 and 6 miles an hour. So I don't necessarily need offset speed there, right? I want to see a whole bunch of the map around me so that I can tell what needs to be mapped yet and what doesn't. But when I'm up on plane, pretty much if I'm going faster than 10 miles an hour, right, I'm either plowing water, which is no good, and I'm not mapping and I'm not getting good looking imaging. So if I'm going faster than 10, that means I'm coming up onto plane, or I'm already on plane, right? So once I pass 10 miles an hour, that boat icon is going to go jump down here, and then all of this map in front of me will become visible. The whole map shifts then, so I can see more of the contour lines that are out in front of me. So that's a really cool thing. If you guys aren't using that, if you didn't know about that, you should. It's very helpful. So what else is in the chart view here, right? Map source. You can choose your map source. Don't use base map, but yeah, I just leave that set on auto. Chart orientation, I like head up. That way if I drive straight, that piece of lake is always right. So you can see it's on H up for head up. If I'm driving straight, then I know that I just keep driving straight, right? I don't have to worry about the boat pointing a certain way, you know, and a lot of people aren't wired that way. You know, a lot of people like to look at north up. You know, it's just, I prefer to have the map rotate around as I spin the boat so that I know what's out in front of me and I can just kind of glance at it without having to figure out, you know, bird's eye view. I don't even have visible, so that I'm not sure what that's on there, but I also don't know what that is because I don't use the bird's eye view. So north reference, you can do either true or magnetic. I do true north. North up indicator right down here, you can either turn that on or off. Auto zoom. Oh, I remember reading about this one. It, if I'm not mistaken, that is used. Oh, I'll have to go and look at the manual before I tell you guys. But I believe that that's used for when you're coming up on waypoints, and that's the distance from the waypoint that you want to zoom in and out. I think, not sure. Oh no. Hang on. Whatever. I'll go look at the book. You can turn the latitude and longitude grid on and off. And then if we go over to Humminbird chart, right, so the zero lines cards, the maps we've been making, right, so for the base layer, I normally choose, so this got reset here when I made some, made those changes with Contour XD and base map. But so the base layer on this, I always choose the 2D map, even though I've got aerial available on the LakeMaster Plus. I don't use that frequently. You know, sometimes I'll come in and turn that on, but not very often. And then the overlay options are where I display the auto chart maps that I've made. Right, so we'll go to auto chart. There you go, and then you see the lake filled in. And then you can set transparency on this too, right? So my transparency is normally set at 0, right? I don't want to see the nonsense that's behind, when I'm recording. But if I'm on lakes that are already HD mapped, I do believe those a little bit more than, the regular ones. I still map them myself, but in that case, I might turn the transparency up a little bit so that I can see, the underlying data behind what I'm recording, right? So if we put that on transparency 70, for example, and then we zoom into this, so we can see all the red, right? My data is kind of transparent. All that red is what, LakeMaster says that lake is supposed to look like. But so if we come over here though, and we look at this lake down here, right? So they're saying, LakeMaster is saying that 5-foot line comes all the way out into there. Well, that's nonsense. You can see data that I've recorded already that shows where that 5-foot line actually sits. Yeah, so not very helpful, right? It is what it is, but yeah, so that's how you change that. And then I always have the contour lines visible, of course, right? I mean, if you turn off the contour lines, what good is the map? Depth colors, I just happen to like color palette 3. And then we talked about depth highlight and shallow water highlight already. Water level offset, you can use this, right? So let me get rid of this transparency here. It'll make more sense then. Okay. So water level offset, you can use if you're fishing, a reservoir or a flowage or something that gets drawn down, or if it's high. You get that in a lot of river systems, right? You fish the Mississippi, the water's really high, whatever, that kind of thing. But so you can adjust the water level, from whatever your known good value is, right? So, for example, if I came out on this lake and I put my boat right here, I know this is supposed to be roughly 6 feet deep. If I ever come out on this lake and it's 10 feet deep, right, then I can go down to water level offset and add 4 feet to it. And now it's going to show that as being 10 feet deep, right? So that actually changes the depth on your graph, right? So if we go up and look, Yeah, it's not going to make that island disappear, I don't think, because there's not enough decent data around it. Yeah, so we can make the island get bigger though if we go the other way, right? So if we go water level offset and we take 5 feet out of the lake, you can see how much bigger that island got, right? Let me take a little bit less out of there. How about we take out only like 3 feet? Right, it still thinks the island goes way over here because I haven't mapped that, and right, the Lake Master map is terrible. But so keep an eye on the right hand side of that when I'm making these changes, right? So if we set this to no offset, right, there's the correct size of the island, right? So I will put the cursor right on the corner of where that island is. Now, if I take away even 2 feet of water, right, well, what's going to happen is, so it's going to use these contour lines, right? So it knows that's a foot and the next one's 2 foot, right? So if I take away 2 feet of water, then those 1 and 2 foot contour lines should be dry, right? So that's exactly what it's going to do. So if I take away 2 feet of water, there you go. You can see now, haven't moved that cursor. You can see now though that the island extends to the right out past that cursor. So that's something else to keep in mind though. If you do use that feature, make sure that when you go to a different lake or even back to that same lake, make sure that you double check. I don't use that feature myself. You know, I just, if the water level is down that far around here anyway, I generally don't fish that water because it starts to get hazardous. And if the water's high, then that's fine. It's not a big deal to me. Yeah, so there you go. That's how that works. See what else we've got in here. Lake list. So you can look at all the lakes that are on here. So on your Lake Master card, might be helpful. I don't know. I don't ever use that, but so we'll talk about some of the other menu items and other episodes. But until next time, enjoy.